Good morning, everyone. Classroom, Facebook, miyos na nasota. Iwi totawa igogi tiyak tayamchik. Igo si teachers. Ksnohamagi wak. Iwi ksnohamagwi igo language. Igo si Métis culture. I'm so happy to be here to be able to speak to you in regards to what has been planned for a while now as far as learning, language, traditions, culture, values, and there'll be a lot of teachers and elders joining in this process, in this program. And to engage and try and inspire as much as we can our young people to be able to know there's places to go to learn. Celebrating a foundation of Métis identity, culture, and values. That is so important in our language. Ndayam wunya, taskut managani yan, apuchi mechifas wogapikskwe. Our language is so important. That is our foundation of who we are as Métis people. Cooking will be a part of it, music, storytelling, and a whole bunch of other activities that you'll be enjoying. Language keepers, we call them language keepers, our elders, and they'll be doing a lot of teaching as well. We encourage you to learn more about our Métis heritage. And the most important thing that we try to do is engage with others, not only Métis, but First Nations and mainstream individuals that represent universities, industry, provincial, federal governments, and whoever wants to participate. We're all in it together, because when we work together, it makes for a better community, a better Saskatchewan, and a better Canada. So I'd like to thank at this time the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan and all the people that have organized this event, and our partners, Canadian Heritage, Canadian Geographic, and everyone watching from across our Métis homeland and beyond. Mamoa Picoyes, Iwaste Katio, Tinigikit now, Iwichoganimia, Iwaste, Tamamoa Tuskia, Katota Wisu Pitama, our Métis heritage. Thank you.
I'm proud to be speaking to you from the heartland of the Métis and Treaty 6 territory. Welcome to others from across the Métis homeland. We pay our respect to our First Nations and Métis relatives and reaffirm our relationship with one another. For the next 3 days, starting at 9 a.m., we present 2 hours of special sessions from Métis elders and knowledge keepers, covering topics like the preservation of Michif language to traditional Métis foods and music. With our partners at the Royal Canadian Geographical Society and Canadian Heritage, Métis Nation is proud to present Kishkayhta. We encourage conversation and engagement from individuals and classrooms. Today, we are pleased to have Yvonne Maurice demonstrate our Métis way to fillet fish. I got to know Yvonne just briefly here in the last little while, and I asked her to present today, and she did a wonderful job, and we thanked the school up at Pine House Lake that so graciously let Yvonne fillet the fish in their school. She was excited. She was happy. She does the, land-based learning all the time. So for her to be filleting fish, it was just like no other day. Okay. And then second today, we have our youth president, Autumn Larose Smith. Autumn is going to give a detailed journey on how she became the Métis Nation Saskatchewan Youth President. Very knowledgeable young lady. We are proud to have her as the Youth President. And yeah, so look forward to the next 3 days of entertainment for you, and learning a little bit about our Métis ways and Michif ways. And yeah, so without further ado, we will go to Yvonne.
I'm going to make 5 different kind of fish. I'm going to make a boiled fish, dry fish, fillet the fish, and open fire and oven. This is white fish. This would be boiling. I've been doing this for many years, so. You boiled this fish. Getting these bones out, there's one line of bones right here. You have to get them out. When you make dry fish, you have to get all the bones out. And the bones are all in a straight line. You just cut it in a straight line. And these are the bones. You have to cut it like this so the smoke will go all over the fish when you smoke it. This is it. This fish is kind of frozen, so it... There's a little bit of bones here. You always have to take them out because they're so small. It's easy to not see them when you're eating. how we do it when we cook it in a grill outside. Throwing it in the oven. Just take the guts out. That is just catfish.
I heard it's the best meat for fish patties, those big jackfish.
Yeah, they're good. You can also eat the head. You can eat this, and you can eat this. And the liver, you know, people before they used to make it all the time because there's afford anything. So they always used to make bannock out of these. There, you can also eat this, you can also fry that. These also have a backbone you have to take. Jack. Is this pickerel? Most of the time people make fillets out of pickerel. But you can still just take the guts out and cook it outside or cook it in the oven. It's just that people got used to fillets out of pickerel. You can also eat the cheeks and these here. I think it's the easiest thing is to make pickle. Okay, that's my demonstration. Thank you very much. You're very nice.
Hello, everyone. My name is Autumn Larose Smith, and I am the current president of the Provincial Métis Youth Council in Saskatchewan and recently appointed Minister of Youth for the Métis Nation, Saskatchewan. And I am truly honored to be speaking to you today, albeit virtually and recorded, for the Youth Forums Canada Keeping Community and Culture Alive conference. Truly an honor to share a little bit about my story as a queer and Métis person and kind of my career journey and how it brought me to be elected into this position that I'm in right now and some of my goals that I have. And so I really hope that you're able to resonate a little bit with my story. And if not, that's totally okay. We all have a different story and being able to honor that is really important. But I'm really happy to share about who I am and kind of my journey to being the new president of the Youth Council. And so a little bit about me really quickly. I am born and raised in Saskatoon, and that's currently where I'm living, and happily engaged to my beautiful fiance, Jessica, and we have 3 pets, little Pyrenees mutt named Georgia, then a little German Shepherd, husky mutt named Nelson, and our sweet cat, her name is Birdie. And so, like I mentioned, born and raised in Saskatoon, raised by my mom. My father passed away from cancer when I was 12, and so I mostly raised by my mom's side of the family. And I have a lot of siblings but on both sides, but I grew up with the siblings on my mom's side. And so 2 older brothers and then a younger sister who were kind of, the closest in close proximity to me in how I grew up. And then also my grandma was living in our house throughout my entire life. My mom is my grandma's sole caregiver throughout my entire life. And so she really helped raise me as well. And, when my mom would go to work or throughout the summers. And so my grandma was a huge influence on me that way. And so I guess for me, I kind of always knew that I was Métis. It wasn't something that wasn't necessarily hidden from me or my siblings, which I'm really grateful for. And I know that isn't the case for a lot of people. And certainly wasn't the case for people in my family as well. And for, my mom and my grandparents. And so because of that, my mom, she worked for Métis Local in Saskatoon for almost 2 decades growing up. And so that really, helped me be involved in the Métis community and going to Batoche. I remember running through the tent city during Batoche Festival on the campgrounds there and watching the performances and listening to the fiddle music and the jiggers and just always being completely in awe. And growing up volunteering for the Métis local that I'm currently with, although there's a couple Métis locals in Saskatoon that, have really helped kind of help me come into my Métis identity. But the one that my mom worked at, I remember going there. They had a Christmas supper every year, and when I was a little kid, and then eventually I got to an age where I was a little bit too old to be participating in the Christmas lunches for the children, and so I started becoming a Christmas elf in a way, and became a volunteer and helped helped run those Christmas events for the children, and then the elder suppers, and always seeing the elders having such a good time and dancing along to the fiddle music, and just being in each other's presence was always something really beautiful and something that I looked forward to doing every single year. And so I guess a little bit about my schooling in a way. And so I went to French immersion elementary school and in high school in Saskatoon, and so graduated with my French diploma, which has been really helpful in learning Michif, but we'll get into that a little bit as well. And so I remember in grade 4, I think grade 4 in Saskatchewan at least, is when you start to learn about Métis people and Métis history. I remember just being like so proud and like raising my hand and being like, I'm Métis, and sharing that and with the class. And after that, that probably 2 weeks lesson in grade 4, it was never talked about ever again. I never even really remember hearing it in any of my other courses or any of my other classes. And so throughout my life and currently, I've never been the best student. I hate school with a passion. I don't like being in school, but I know that it is incredibly important for anyone. Any kind of schooling is incredibly important for finding success in life in various ways, whatever that means to you. And so what really helped me get through school, I was always bad at doing my homework and bad at being in the classes, but I really loved being a part of community and feeling really involved. And so I was on, all the sports teams that I could be on, and part of the drama club and the musical and the SRC. And by doing that, it really helped me kind of have a little bit of responsibility in actually going to classes. And so after I graduated high school, I took a couple years off university. I didn't really want to go straight in like all of my other friends did. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had absolutely no clue what I wanted to do with my life and how I was going to get there. And the fact that I had to, that I had everyone saying like you had to go to school to be able to do anything was really daunting. And so I worked in a women's shelter. I did child programming for a year, and then eventually moved and helped open up an emergency receiving home in Saskatoon. And so that is for children 0 to 12 who've been apprehended by social services or in immediate need of emergency placement or in foster care. And so I was at this house for about 5 years as a emergency receiving home worker, and cared for, I think, close to 300 children, maybe a little bit over 300 children during my time. And when we first started, I helped start and open up the very first home, and then by the time I left, we had about 4 or 5 homes in Saskatoon, which was really amazing to see that there was emergency, housing, safe housing available for children, but also heartbreaking that Saskatchewan was in such dire need and in crisis mode for, safe foster placements, and the fact that there's so many children in foster care. And so I did that job for a couple of years, and I think after a couple of years, I ended up taking a summer off for burnout. I was in high burnout and needed a mental health leave. And so I went tree planting in northern and southern Alberta and lived in a tent, for the whole 3 months. At one point, there was even grass growing through the floor of my tent because I didn't tarp it properly. And, waking up to many nights soaking wet, or at some point it even snowed. But it was a really amazing experience just being outside all the time, all day, every single day. And being in the trees and the forest and I spent most of my time, to be completely honest, looking at flowers and rocks. And so I did that, and then I came back to Saskatoon and realized that I wanted to do something different. I knew that I didn't want to be working in this home forever, and so I decided to apply to the SUNTEP program in Saskatchewan. So that stands for Saskatchewan Urban Native Teachers Education Program. It's a four-year, fully accredited Métis-based education degree. So I guess going in this program to be a teacher. And now, when I started this program, I didn't necessarily know in my heart or think in my heart that I wanted to be a teacher. I felt that I would do a really great job at it. I still think that I'd do a good job at it, but I just knew immediately that it wasn't necessarily what I wanted. But I wanted an education degree because I wanted to keep working with youth and with community in some capacity. And so, something that I really love about the SUNTEP program, I'm still in SUNTEP actually, is that it is a smaller program. And so at the Saskatoon location, there's about 80 students in total for all 4 years. So you build a really close community with your class compared to if you were to go into the mainstream education program and there could be 200 people in your class. In SUNTEP, there might be 15, and you see them kind of all day, every day, and they check in on you and you check in on them, and it's just a really amazing bonding experience. And then on top of that, all of those students are also Métis, and so everyone in that program is Métis. And so in SUNTEP, my whole life I knew that I was Métis, and I felt really proud of my Métis identity, but I also was longing for more than what I knew, and that my Métis identity in a lot of ways was kind of just I felt like I only knew like just the surface level, or just a bare minimum of what it meant to be Métis. We had a sash on our door. We listened to fiddle music and to watch jiggers perform, and I loved to play the spoons, but it kind of ended there. And because you don't really learn about the history and the culture, past grade 4 in a lot of ways, unless you have a really amazing teacher or the curriculum's changed in, the over 10 years since I've been in school. I longed for that opportunity. And so SUNTEP just seemed like the perfect fit. In your first year in SUNTEP, you take a trip to Batoche, and you tour the battlegrounds at Batoche and learn more about more in depth about the history and the culture and the people, and seeing the landmarks and seeing names in the grave sites, and looking over the valley a little bit, and just hearing more about that story was really a remarkable experience. And then being fully immersed in learning about my Métis culture was, I think, really, I always say the SUNTEP program was completely life-changing for me in a lot of ways. And for someone who didn't really like school, it really helped that the program was a lot smaller. And then in your second year in SUNTEP, you go to the Manitoba Archives in Winnipeg, and then some historical landmarks and spaces in Manitoba as well. You get to go tour in your second year. And so you're given these really amazing opportunities to learn about your Métis culture and your identity and the history. And even in your first year as well, one of the classes that you have to take is a Michif language class. And so you're even now learning the Michif language, which is extremely important. And for me, I have I graduated with my French diploma from high school. And so I have the French side of that, but that's only a small portion of the Michif language. And so I was in this SUNTEP program, and, still hating school so much, but I love school, but I hate school. But I think it was my second year, over the summer, I was like, I couldn't do it anymore. It was stressing me out too much, and I ended up dropping out of the program because something in me, I was like, I felt like I didn't want to be a teacher, and everything in this program was, talking about being a teacher at this point. And then it was about 2 weeks into the new term of my third year or my second year. somewhere in between there. It's about 2 weeks in. And I called up the program head, Sheila Pocha, and I was like, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have done this. I want to come back. And she was like, I never even took your name off the list. I knew that you would always be back. And I'll remember that forever because, you know, I can't even imagine what the process would have been like to re-enrolling in university. And she believed in me enough to know that I would come back. And so, you know, I was 2 weeks late into class. So I just had a couple weeks to catch up on with school, but that was okay. Got my books. And what helped me stay in school and university is kind of the same story with high school as well. Instead of, you know, finding sports, though, I found student groups. And so at the University of Saskatchewan, there's over 100 different student groups that you can be a part of. And if there isn't a student group that interests you, you can make one. And so I was a part of like 5-6 student groups. Wasn't doing very well in my classes. I failed a couple of classes, but at least I was, you know, at least I was still staying in the program and pushing myself and trying my hardest. But it was these student groups that kept me in SUNTEP. And so, you know, over this time, I was still working full time at the emergency receiving home. So we had, you know, school classes for SUNTEP from 8 to 3:30ish. And then I worked 4 to midnight, Monday to Friday, and then still somehow found time for student groups. And so I was obviously running myself way too thin. I wouldn't recommend that to anyone, but it was just something that I had to do when I was, you know, just got out of high school. I think very irresponsible and I didn't know better. Now I do, but I went and leased a car that was way outside of my budget. But I was working at the time full time, and I wasn't going to university, and so I didn't really think past my life at that point. And so I leased this car, and then when I decided that I did want to go to university, it's kind of like oh no, like I had these really expensive car payments, and so that really forced me to kind of work and go to school. And I'm truly grateful because the SUNTEP program for most students, I think all students, is fully funded tuition as well. And so I truly do not think that I would have been able to go to university without that funding and support. And so I was a part of the SUNTEP Student Council, and then eventually was elected president of the SUNTEP Student Council, and got to meet with the College of Education dean weekly, and being a part of these student groups. And then eventually in 2019, or 2018 maybe, I applied to be an ambassador of hope with We Matter. And We Matter is a national Indigenous youth-led nonprofit in Canada that focuses on Indigenous youth specific mental health supports, initiatives, and empowering Indigenous youth in Canada to be change makers and leaders in their own community. And so I applied to be this ambassador of hope and got accepted and got to participate in this really amazing program. I was in this program for 3 years. And during this time as well, I decided to make this really huge change in my life and leave the emergency receiving home after 5 years, you know, a home that I loved so much and helped to start up and really built it to what it was. And I knew that I needed a change because I was feeling really burnt out. And so I took this really huge leap and I decided to run for Vice President of Student Affairs for the University of Saskatchewan Students' Union, and was elected during the by-election in October, I think of 2019, and began working full-time, I guess, in that role as Vice President Student Affairs. And so the Students' Union is or the University of Saskatchewan Students' Union is the largest, I guess, student governing body for the University of Saskatchewan campus. And they represent close to 20,000 undergraduate students on a provincial and federal level, municipal, and advocate with the university and work with the University of Saskatchewan as well. And so during this, in this role, I got to focus my work on a lot of efforts regarding sustainability, but also including my being just this proud Métis woman, proud Métis queer woman in to be able to help advocate for students. And so working with the university to ensure that there's proper Métis representation in committees and in youth representation and queer representation, and then bringing these all together and, working to celebrate Louis Riel Day and hosting events on campus and for students to learn more about Métis culture and history, and working with the CENTIP program. And so it was a really beautiful experience. And then during this time as well, I got asked to speak at on the youth panel for the Wichita Indigenous Engagement Conference. And so this is a conference in Saskatchewan, that is for mostly healthcare support service providers. And that's the first time that I ended up speaking to, or the largest crowd that I've ever spoke to. And so far, I guess, at this point in my journey, and ended up being a sold out event. And there was over 800 people in the conference space that we were in. And so it was truly amazing to have that opportunity to speak about, what reconciliation meant to me and to the other youth on the youth panel, and how we can include youth in that process. And so doing all these things, running around like crazy, just figuring out how to survive in university, not doing too well in my classes, but like still passing, which was good enough for me. And then eventually, halfway through that year, I finally got diagnosed with ADHD. And so I kind of joked my whole life about knowing that I had ADHD. And I guess, when I was in elementary school, when I was younger, I'm pretty sure a teacher brought up to my mom about getting me diagnosed, and I didn't want to be diagnosed. I was scared that I was going to get bullied. And I didn't want other students or the teachers to think that I was stupid or incapable. And so by the time I got to my 20s, I kind of realized like, no, this is a diagnosis that I really need. And also having ADHD doesn't make you stupid or incapable. And so getting this diagnosis for me was incredibly life-changing in a lot of ways. And because I started also doing a lot more research about ADHD and how it affects me and how I'm affected by it, and realizing like all these things about myself and the way that I work. And from that started realizing that I don't necessarily hate school. I couldn't really work well in the way that it was set up. And so I had to work with my professors and with myself and find a strategy that worked for me to do well in my classes and to boost my grades. And so thankfully I got that diagnosis, and it's been, I think, 2 years since, and was extremely helpful. And I couldn't have done it without the help of the wellness team on campus. It was the doctors on campus who really helped me do that. And so I had this diagnosis, and I eventually decided that I wanted to run for president of the University of Saskatchewan Students' Union, and got elected. And so I became the first Indigenous woman in the history of the USSU to be elected. So in 111 years, there had never been an Indigenous woman in that role. And there had never been even a woman in that role in almost a decade. And when I looked, a lot of students, I guess, or my peers and my friends were encouraging me to run and asking me to run. And these community leaders were saying, like, you should do it. And I didn't necessarily want to. I didn't believe in myself, I guess. And I was scared, and it was just not something that I thought that I wanted to do. And at the USSU in the Students' Council, they have this huge wall with all of the past student executives. And after I was having lunch with someone one day, and they were really saying, like, you should run. And so I went into this room, and I kind of just like looked at all of these faces on these walls, and I didn't see myself. I never seen myself, and I knew that I didn't want someone else in a couple of years to come and see and have that exact same experience. And they were looking at the wall. And so I said, okay, let's do it. I ran, and was thankfully I got elected. Then boom, March, COVID came to Canada and became a reality. And so I spent the entirety of that term essentially in COVID, in a life with COVID. And so all completely online. But it was still one of the, it's such an incredible experience to be able to represent queer and Métis women on and undergraduate students at the U of S on a provincial and federal level, and at a time when the city of Saskatoon was having a mayoral election, and there's other elections going on, and so being able to have that voice and to host opportunities for youth to come in and to share their voice was really exciting. And then I guess one of the things that I was the most proud of in that role as when I was working as president was that I created the anti-racism memorandum of understanding with the president's executive committee with the University of Saskatchewan. And so this anti-racism MOU would secure funding for students to host anti-racism events or initiatives or engagements or anything that they desire to contribute to an anti-racist movement. And also would ensure that that the university senior leadership would have mandatory training and reporting on students and all of these different things. And so it took a couple months of drafting and negotiating, but eventually it came into fruition and it got signed. And it was truly an amazing thing being able to sign that along with the president of the university, and that became the first MOU of its kind in Canada in universities. And so, taking that work from there, I finished my term as president and then started working for We Matter. So at this, I was still volunteering. And then kind of a position opened up and I put my name in the running, and then I started working for We Matter as their programs and outreach administrator. And was only in that position for a couple of months working when the Provincial Métis Youth Council president election kind of became public. And so throughout my life, I really wanted to start provincial Métis Youth Council. I'd seen, what other provincial Métis Youth Councils in Canada have been doing, and it was truly inspiring. And I really wanted to have something like that here in Saskatchewan for myself and for all the other Métis youth in Saskatchewan as well to feel a part of. And so I put my name in the running for this election. And prior to this, I guess I ran in 2 other elections and was successful in them and got elected. And so, I thought I would give it a go. And it was absolutely amazing and terrifying and exciting and nerve-wracking, nauseating. It's a lot of times when I was so stressed to run in this position, because it was the first presidential election in Saskatchewan. And so I guess in the past there's been a youth council and president, but they weren't elected positions. And so this was an opportunity to be elected by my peers. And so in November, I got elected and then made the decision to leave We Matter. I let them know, I love We Matter with my whole heart and working for them and what they do for community. But I knew that this was something that I needed to do and something that was very important for me. And so I came into this role and was the first youth president in the history of the Métis Nation Saskatchewan to participate in the swearing-in ceremony at the Legislative Assembly. So I was sworn in as president and as the new Minister of Youth for Saskatchewan. And something that I really wanted to do that I felt was extremely important for myself, just as an individually, but it was extremely important to show to other Métis youth that that they could be in a position like this. So something that I was really proud to do was do my entire swearing-in ceremony both in Michif and in English. And so I'm pretty sure that you're going to be hearing from Elder Fleury during this conference. And I'm very grateful to have had Elder Fleury both as my Michif teacher in Suntep, but also to help me fully translate my oath in Michif. And to do that broadcasted live to anyone who is watching the Legislative Assembly and to all of the members of the Legislative Assembly, all of the presidents of the locals, and of the Provincial Métis Council of Saskatchewan. And to be able to show that, you know, I took this initiative to learn and do my oath in Michif and English, because I knew that that was really important to showcase that the youth do care about their culture and they do care about their history and they do want to learn their language. So I did this. It has been absolutely amazing. And since then, just been working on the onboarding process of just coming into my position. Right. So I guess that's a little bit about my career journey. I guess another thing to mention is I'm happily on the Out Saskatoon Board of Governors. And so Out Saskatoon is a Saskatoon-based nonprofit that supports support the 2S LGBTQIA community in Saskatoon and surrounding area, and provide support services and counseling and sexual health services, education and training and research opportunities, community events, and housing for 2S LGBTQIA youth in Saskatoon. And so I'm on that board as well and have been lucky enough to be on a couple of other boards. But I guess for me, you know, when I tell the story, I think it's really amazing. And, you know, of course, and I'm really proud of myself in everything that I've been able to accomplish. But I know that I would not have been able to accomplish all of these things if it weren't for the strong supportive community that I had growing up and currently. And so, you know, when I knew that I was Métis growing up, I didn't realize how lucky I was. And it wasn't until I was in Suntep when I started working on my genealogy and kind of asking a little bit more questions, I learned that my grandma, who helped raise me and was in my house, you know, that I lived with my entire life, went to residential school. And that her dad, my great grandpa, had to hide his Métis identity in order to support his family and his children. And so my mom tells me that he was, you know, the best handyman around and a veteran, a World War veteran as well. And he wasn't getting hired. No one was hiring him. He lived on a certain side of town and you know, people associated that town with Métis people, I suppose. And so he moved to a different side of town and hid those aspects of his culture and his identity so that he could put food on the table for his kids. And so, you know, that's only, you know, 3 generations back, where my family for survival had to hide who they were. And then now you have me, you know, someone who's proud to say that they're Métis and who boasts their sash and everywhere they can. Any important event, you know, that I have had in my most recent adulthood is I'm wearing my sash. because I want people to know that I'm Métis. And so I guess when I think about that, it kind of helps me stay focused on my goals to personally reconnect with my culture and my teachings, and Michif language, and have a personal responsibility in a way to ensure that these things can survive, and that I'm able to pass them down to my future kids and the future kids in my life. And I guess some ways that I do this is, if there's my Métis local in Saskatoon is hosting a free plant walk, and they'll teach you the plants in Michif. I'm going to sign up for it. Or out Saskatoon last summer, they hosted an event called Out on the Land, and it was a queer cultural camping event that I participated in to learn learn more about different medicines that the land had to offer, and different traditional teachings, and be really lucky for that. And I know that, for me, I grew up in an urban setting in Saskatoon, which is Saskatchewan's largest city. And so I felt that I had to take advantage of these opportunities because they're pretty hard to find. And especially for me, it's really important. The land is very important, and being on the land is really important to who I am. And I always found that it was really hard to find opportunities to learn in that way, because I'm living in this big city. And so I guess that plays into, part of what I hope to do in my role as president, is making sure that youth, regardless of where they're living or what their situation is, have opportunities to explore their Métis identity and learn about their history and their culture, and learn Michif language, so that they have these things for themselves, but so that they're able to pass them on, and that we feel empowered to stand up and say, hey, I'm Métis, and to be able to tell people about our histories, and to even tell people about our families. And so I know not everyone is going to go into the SUNTEP program, and that's okay. Not everyone wants to be a teacher or wants to even go to university, but I feel in my heart and that we should still all have opportunities to learn about our family history. And for a lot of people, learning about your family history can be quite hard when it's been hidden, or your family had to, change their name or move to a different place just to survive. Or if you don't have any, you're not close to your family, or you don't have any kind of remaining close family members to even share that with you. And I don't want anyone to feel that they don't have an opportunity to learn about that. So figuring out every way that we can to provide opportunities for youth to explore their genealogy and learning about their history. For me, I really love to write poetry, and no one in my life that I knew in my family or my friends liked to write poetry. And I didn't know why. Like I had this this desire and this love for doing it. And then in my second year, when we did our genealogy project, and I traced back my lineage, and I was looking at, all my relatives, and I realized that our family was related to Pierre Falcon, who is a famous Métis poet and songwriter. And it was such a really cool moment that, here's this person from 200 years ago, 300 years ago, maybe, that was also a poet and loved to write songs. And I immediately connected with this person, and they were related to me. And it was also really cool to learn about, somewhere down the line, there's a tragic accident of one of my however many great cousins. Was 4 years old, and traveling. In my family, traveled back and forth between Montana and Manitoba. Almost every other person was born in one place or the other. And during one of these travels, a 4-year-old, one of my cousins, who's 4 years old, fell off the Red River cart and died. And so when you're learning about, the hardships that that our families experience as well, it can really it really helped me want to honor all of their spirits by doing everything I can to hold on to the language. And after high school, I lost my way a little bit. One of my closest friends had passed away in a tragic workplace accident, and so a lot of the work that I'm doing now, I do in spirit of him as well, to honor him as he's passed on, and because I wasn't doing well mentally, and I want to be able to provide youth with that opportunity, that they'll have someone to go to when times get hard, or if they're struggling, or if they're grieving, that they have someone to go to, but they also have the ability to turn inwards and to turn to their culture and to their history, and learning about their family, and using that as that resilience that we have, that's in our DNA, to help get them through. I guess I want to talk a little bit now about my my identity as a queer woman, and how that comes into play with my Métis identity. And for me, I see them being completely intersected, and I don't separate those identities. When I've said the past, when I go to a Métis event, I'm still a queer woman, and when I go to events for queer people, I'm still Métis. And so I try to honor all sides of me. And one of the ways that I do that is when I boast my sash, on my body, across my chest, around my hips, I'm always wearing a rainbow pin, to kind of symbol that side of me as well. And part of the reason why I wanted to run for president of the Provincial Métis Youth Council is that I had felt and been told by a lot of my peers that that it felt like there wasn't a place for us, that we weren't, that there wasn't a safe place for us to be who we were, and to feel empowered, and to feel pride in our identities as queer and Métis people. And so when I ran, I was very open about my plans to change change that perception, and to work with people in the community, to help create and turn this into a safe space for all, and so that all could feel empowered, and to be filled with pride in who they are. And I have that in everything that I do. I didn't necessarily have a TV coming out in a lot of ways. I just one day ended up dating a woman, and that was that, I guess. And I never really even had to think about my identity past that, in the way that I know a lot of people have to, or that a lot of people do. So I'm very grateful to have had family and friends who were automatically accepting, and for the most part, a lot of friends who were already in the queer community, and helped be guide, and helped be a shoulder to cry on, and so if we can find ways to be that for each other, regardless of how we identify, ensuring that you're taking steps to be a safe place, and for other people, I think is really important. And so for me, I think one of the largest takeaways from this talk is that your journey might not be linear. You might bounce all over the place, going from job to job, or deciding whether or not you're going to go into school, and then dropping out, and then going back, and figuring out what you want. For me, I guess even with school too, because I didn't like it and I didn't think it mattered, I just kind of was in that mentality that, and I never wanted to be in school past my degree. And so I was just in the mentality of like, okay, just get, a passing grade, C's get degrees or whatever people say, and get out of here, never look back. And now I'm in a place where I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I want to go into a master's program. And if I could, another tidbit of advice is prepare for the future in ways that you're not even imagining. I never imagined that I would have wanted to be in a place in my life where I went to, where I furthered my education past my bachelor's degree in education. And so now I'm in a place where I'm really focusing on raising my grades, and it's going to be a lot of a longer process that, if I found ways to make my classes work better for me and communicate with my teachers a lot earlier on, I wouldn't be in this position. But I didn't think it mattered, and now it does. And so your journey isn't always going to be linear in your career path, or in the ways that you identify as a person. And so I guess allowing yourself the space to accept that, and to push forward and to keep pushing forward and challenging yourselves and exploring your options. So keeping your doors open and not selling yourself short. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I'm happily engaged to my beautiful fiance. And when I was younger, I wasn't around anyone who was married. And I guess, I knew two people who were married out of my entire family. And so I never thought marriage would even be a possibility for me. I didn't think that I would even want to be married. And I kind of dismissed it my whole life, and then ended up finding someone who I was madly in love with and want to share life and want to be married to. And being a young adult and spending my money recklessly, or, getting into that freaking, sorry if I said freaking, getting it, putting my name into that car lease and paying into these really expensive car payments. I didn't think it mattered, because I never thought that I would be an adult who'd one day want to, find a house to live and to settle down. And now I am in that position. And so having to work to fix those mistakes in my past. And that's okay, because for me, I have a community that I can lean on, and that I can learn from, and that I can turn to. And when you look past when I look past the surface levels of what you learn in grade 4 about Métis people, about jigging and bannock and fiddle music and playing the spoons and wearing a red sash and Red River carts, you start to learn more about the resilience of your family and your family lines, and the knowledge that your family holds and that you hold. And I think one of the biggest takeaways, and something that has been so ingrained in my life and the way that I live my entire life, but I never really understood why, was that aspect of community, and that learning about Métis communities and settlements and people, they had to rely on each other for survival. They took care of each other, and they made sure that that everyone had a place to thrive and was looked after. Nobody that went hungry, and they would take in children from families where their parents have passed away because that was just something that you did. And that's something that I see, Métis people have this strong sense of community. And I see it all across the board. And if you're in a place right now where you don't feel like you have that, I invite you to reach out to me if you'd like. But I invite you to take every opportunity you can and take advantage of every opportunity you can to learn about your family and your history and your traditions and your personal traditions. And through that, I think you'll open up your door to this very beautiful community. A couple weeks ago when I was running in the election for provincial youth president, I was following people on Instagram and, trying to find as many people as I could who would vote for me. And I came across this person who had the same last name as me. And on Instagram, no connection, no mutual friends. I had no idea who they were. And I kind of messaged them jokingly and was like, hey, we have the same last name. Like, we're cousins, making that connection. And they told me they ended up living in BC. And that's where they grew up and their whole family's from. And I just through talking and talking and learning about each other and sharing our experiences, and we shared our genealogy that we both had and that we'd both done the time to research and do, and we realized that we were actually directly related. We had the exact same family line. And so through this one-off chance of finding someone just on Instagram and then learning like this is a direct family member who's directly related to me was absolutely amazing. And so when you take initiative in learning about these things, it's really going to open up a community that you never knew existed. And it's important for me as well to do this because my grandma never could. And my great grandpa never could, and my great grandma's my great aunts and uncles never could do this. And so it's a lot of weight to hold on your shoulders, and thinking like if at the same time thinking if I don't do this, then it might get lost in my family forever. And so it's extremely daunting and terrifying, but the fact that you are participating in a forum like this tells me that you want to do that. You want to ensure that you are continuing and learning about your culture and history, and you're going to pass that on and share that with future generations. And that's an incredibly beautiful thing. And although I have no idea how many youth are attending this forum in Canada, I can tell you, whoever I'm speaking to, that you're probably not the only person in Canada attending this forum. And so that's a really beautiful thing when you think about it. And hopefully you'll have opportunities to meet with other grade 9 to 12 students across Canada to connect with and build relationships with and help support each other and empower each other and keep each other accountable. Go home, at the end of this conference, or if you're already home, that's fair too, but, start a Michif language club at your high school and explore just what will happen and what doors will open up. Because everyone here at this conference, grade 9 to 12, you are leaders already. I hate the saying leaders of tomorrow. You're leaders already. And by going to this conference demonstrates that. And so really finding a way to bring that into your community to help support one another, keep each other accountable, and to recognize the importance in what you're doing is going to be life-changing. And I thank you. I am sincerely grateful to you as well, because for myself, who wants to, raise children moving forward, my children are going to be raised by you, who are going to be in the career force one day, and being their role models. And so I thank you immensely for participating and listening to me talk today, and rambling about, my journey into the position that I'm in now, and how I've kind of embraced my culture and found love in that journey as well. And so if you are interested in, creating something in your community or doing something, I encourage you to reach out to me, or to reach out to the president of your provincial Métis Youth Council in the province that you're in, because there is one, and they're there for you, and they want to help you and want to support you. And I guess a last little thing that I'll say is, it's okay to feel scared, but I challenge you to not be embarrassed. When I was in high school and I would go to conferences like this, I would always feel a little embarrassed when I'd go back and talk to my peers, because I don't know, this idea of self-betterment, is not necessarily something that I remember talking about with my peers in high school, and feeling like I was going to get made fun of. But if only I had the confidence that I have now to just say, to heck with that thought. There's people out there like me who want to do these things. So you don't have to be living in a silo, and you don't feel ashamed about where you are at your journey right now. If you are just realizing that you're Métis, that's okay. If you've known you're Métis your whole life, but you felt like you were too scared to identify that way, or you were feeling shame, that's okay too, because you're here now, and I know after this conference and moving forward that you're going to do the necessary changes in your life to feel empowered, and to be proud of who you are, and to be proud to be Métis. And that's a really beautiful thing. So thank you all very much. I wish you all the best. And I encourage you all to take advantage of this amazing conference and all of the learning opportunities that you have from everyone here. So with that, Malsicho, Malsi, have a great rest of your conference. I wish you all well.
Thank you to Yvonne Maurice and Métis Nation Saskatchewan Youth President Autumn Larose Smith for their presentations today. Great videos. I enjoyed those myself. Yvonne and her fish filleting is simply amazing. It makes it look easy. I wish I could fillet fish that easy. And Autumn, thank you. Great presentation. We look forward to seeing more of you in the future. Thank you again, Autumn. So I'd like to thank everyone who messaged and engaged with us today during the Kishkayhta Métis Culture and Community Youth Conference. Please join us tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. when Vince Hennique and Adam Daigneault join us right here on the Métis Nation Saskatchewan Facebook page for their presentations. Have yourselves a great school day. Bye-bye.